Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely defeated? Like you said everything you needed to, but somehow you still lost? You weren't outsmarted? You were out-silenced in a world where volume often masquerades as confidence. We've been conditioned to think that being loud equals being strong, that defending yourself at all costs is a sign of control, that staying quiet means surrender. But what if the opposite were true? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most misunderstood minds in modern philosophy, believed real power has nothing to do with how much you say, and everything to do with how little. According to him, those who talk too much often reveal more than they intend. Every sentence, every attempt to justify or prove oneself becomes a window into one's insecurities. People who feel the need to explain themselves are already negotiating from a position of weakness. The world teaches us to treat conversation like a battlefield, defend your point, crush your opponent, prove your worth. But Nietzsche proposed something entirely different. The idea that silence isn't just the absence of speech, but a powerful presence in itself. It's one that disrupts, intimidates, and exposes. Silence makes others uncomfortable because it doesn't give them a script to follow. It forces them to face their own assumptions, their own ego, their own noise. So if you've ever felt like the quiet one, the peacemaker, the person who lets others dominate the room while you stay composed, might have mistaken that silence for weakness. But what if that quiet was your greatest advantage? Today, we're not going to talk about how to win an argument. We're going to talk about how to never need one. Because the most intelligent response is often no response at all. And Nietzsche knew. Those who learn to hold their energy, rather than throw it around, those are the ones who can truly shake the world. When you choose not to respond, you're not just staying quiet. You're shifting the entire balance of power in the room. Most people don't speak to connect. They speak to control. Talk to fill the silence, to prove something, to escape their own inner discomfort. So when you deny them that familiar back and forth, when you remain calm and composed, their mind starts doing the work for you. Science confirms it. Social psychologists have shown that in tense situations, silence is often perceived as judgment. Even if you're just listening, the other person feels exposed. Their brain scrambles for cues. They wonder, why aren't you reacting? What are you thinking? Am I being judged? And in that spiral of doubt, their guard starts to slip. Their tone changes. Their words stumble. They try harder to justify themselves because your silence forces them to wrestle with their own insecurities. Without knowing it, they begin to project their fears onto you. Maybe he sees through me. Maybe I'm not making sense. Maybe I'm wrong. And that's the moment the power shifts. Because now we're no longer part of the argument. You've become the mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They reflect back exactly what the other person brought to the table. This is why manipulators fear silence the most. They rely on your reactions to fuel their control. They provoke, hoping to trigger emotion. But when you don't flinch, when you don't rise to their bait, their tactics collapse. They lose their rhythm. They become clumsy. Because manipulation only works on people who respond. But this power isn't just about strategy. It also reveals something deeper. Your silence can activate their deepest, unresolved pain. It reminds them of rejection, of not being important, enough of being ignored by someone they once sought approval from. Without a single word, your presence brings those hidden wounds to the surface, and that is far more devastating than anything you could say. But let's be honest, staying silent isn't easy. It requires strength, discipline, self-awareness. Because everything in you wants to speak. You want to defend yourself, clarify, prove your worth, be understood. But the moment you give in to that need, you give up control. Silence is not passive. It is restraint at its highest form. It's choosing to sit still while the storm passes around you because you know that storms are loudest just before they collapse. And when you train yourself to hold this kind of stillness, something changes. You're no longer playing there. Game, you're setting the rules. You're no longer reacting to energy, you're shaping it quietly, precisely. And in that moment, you become the most powerful person in the room. Let's get one thing straight. Silence is not about retreat. It's about positioning. Nietzsche believed that the person who speaks less is not weak. They're simply not wasting moves. In every conversation, every social dynamic, every power struggle, there's a hidden battlefield. And on that battlefield, silence is your sharpest weapon. But how do you use it? First, don't speak when your ego is screaming to respond. This is the hardest part. Your pride will beg you to explain, to defend, to set the record straight. But that urge, that's the trap. It's the moment you react. You're giving your opponent the exact thing they were fishing for. Proof that they still control your emotions. So next time someone provokes you, let the silence stretch. Let the discomfort grow. You'll be shocked how quickly people start to reveal themselves when you give them nothing to push against. Second, observe like a strategist. While others fill the air with noise, you listen not just to their words, but to their patterns. It's their tone, their contradictions, their nervous habits. You store it all. Because when you finally do speak, if you speak, it will land like a precision strike. It's not louder, just sharper. Third, master the pause. Most people rush to speak because they're afraid of dead air. But silence creates tension, and tension is power. A well-placed pause can make people lean in, question themselves, and start to second-guess what they just said. They haven't even spoken, but already the dynamic is shifting. Fourth, become unpredictable. When people can't read you, they fear you. If you're always silent, they might tune you out. If you're always vocal, they'll expect a reaction. But if you master the dance, sometimes speaking, sometimes holding back, you become unreadable, uncontrollable. And in any social setting, unpredictability is power. But let's be clear, this silence is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not avoidance. It's intentional. It's charged with awareness. It says, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to react. I'm not here to entertain or explain. I am here. That is enough. And that presence, that quiet, grounded energy shifts the entire room. You no longer chase attention, you command it. You no longer fear rejection. You understand that not everyone deserves access to your energy. This is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of someone who knows who they are. And when the moment is right, when the silence has done its work, you may say one sentence. Not to dominate, not to win, but to end the game. There's a darker side to silence. One that most people don't talk about, because not all silence is powerful. Some silence is survival, some is fear. Some is learned helplessness dressed up as peacekeeping. Have you ever told yourself, it's not worth the fight, or I'll just stay quiet to keep the peace? You thought you were being mature, thought you were being the bigger person, but deep down, something in you shrank, something in you dimmed. And here's the brutal truth. Not all silence is strength. Some silence is submission, pretending to be wisdom. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a system built not to empower, but to keep you small. To teach you that being nice is more important than being whole, that keeping others comfortable is more important than being true to yourself. And here's how it happens. People begin to notice that you won't fight back, that you'll avoid conflict, that you'll always take the high road, even when it costs you. So what do? They talk over you. They invade your space. They take without asking, and you let them. You convince yourself that silence is grace, that surrender is strength. But what if I told you it's not? What if I told you this kind of silence is costing you something far greater than peace? It's costing you your self-respect. Real silence, the kind Nietzsche honored, is not silence born of fear. It's silence born of choice. It's the difference between being silenced and choosing to speak through stillness. So how do you reclaim your power? You stop using silence to hide and start using it to stand. You become aware of when your silence is protecting your peace. It's when it's erasing your voice. Because sometimes your silence is not peacekeeping. It's self-abandonment. So today, make this promise to yourself. Let your silence come from strength, not fear. Let it be a boundary, not a cage. Let it say, I am here. I see what's happening. And I choose not to participate in what diminishes me. You don't owe everyone a reaction. You don't owe them an explanation. You owe yourself protection, sovereignty, self-respect. Nietzsche believed the highest human was the Bermensch, a person who rises above societal roles, who doesn't seek validation, and who rules quietly over their own being. They don't dominate with noise. They rule through presence. So now look at your own life. How often has your silence protected you? And how often has it betrayed you? There's a difference. One silence keeps you grounded. The other keeps you hidden. It's time to choose. Comment below if you're ready to make the shift. Say, I choose the silence that commands respect. It's not just as a statement, but as a new way of being. Because in the end, the loudest force in the room is the one that doesn't need to raise its voice.